I'm Mike Sherman, sports editor of the Oklahoman, here talking to one of the co-authors of the new book, The System, The Glory and Scandal of Big-Time College Football. Joining me is Jeff Benedict. Jeff, you spent 2 years reporting and researching this book. Some of it you spent in Stillwater or Boone Pickens Ranch. And in the book, you take the reader to Stillwater on a college football weekend. Cowboys against the Texas Longhorns. Lots of good scenes there. But one of the things I noticed in this, you called Boone Pickens the owner. That's a term that he didn't always embrace. He seems to embrace it in this scene.
Yeah, actually, we don't really call him the owner, but we use the term owner because when we introduce him, we basically say it's kind of understood in college football that there's only two teams with owners. It's Oregon and Oklahoma State. It's sort of said tongue-in-cheek, and certainly we didn't mean it as anything more than that. Because when you get into it, you realize that what's behind that is the fact that these two very successful businessmen, one with Nike, one with oil and gas, have financed the resurgence of two programs that were really, afterthoughts in big-time college football. Oregon and Oklahoma State are not an afterthought anymore. I mean, these are two teams that every year now are in the conversation for national championships and conference championships. And it's because they had a very generous alumnus who came forward and basically, turned the program around with a big, generous investment.
Your book also sort of stratifies or quantifies what kind of boosters are out there.
Yeah.
But Boone, as you illustrate in this book, is a breed apart, both for the money that he's given, but also how he enjoys it.
Yeah, we call Boone a turbo booster. Now that is a term we did come up with and apply to him, and I think it's a great term. I love the fact that a guy his age moves as fast as he does, literally. I traveled with Boone to write this book, and because I really wanted to see how this guy moves and operates, particularly on a football weekend. He doesn't live in Stillwater. He lives and works in Dallas, but he's here. And so I met him in Dallas at his office on a Friday in the middle of a workday, kind of watched him work in the office, and then from that moment that he left the office till after the football game against Texas, I was with him all the time. And the car ride from his office to the airport, the flight from there to his ranch, everything that goes on at the ranch on the weekend. And what I was trying to do was create a series of scenes so that a reader, whether they're an Oklahoma State fan or whether, frankly, they're a University of Washington fan or a Michigan fan, could really feel like, gosh, I really know this guy now. And I get a sense of what it's like to be him. And this is really unique. This guy is doing something that there's probably only one other person that watches football the way Boone does, and that's probably Phil Knight. To sit in a stadium that has your name on it, I mean, how many guys can do that, right? And so when he's watching a football game, I'm wondering, what's it like to be him and watch a game versus the 60,000 people who are in that stadium yelling and screaming.
For those who'll never get invited to Boone's Ranch, can you sort of share some of your takeaways or what it was like to be there that weekend?
Yeah, one of the things was, obviously it's a huge place. I'm from Connecticut. I think his ranch is bigger than the state I come from. It's a huge place. And it's like a wildlife reserve. I mean, it's just, you can see forever. There's wild animals everywhere, and lots of waterways. I mean, miles and miles of waterways. It's like a paradise. You feel like you're out in the middle of nowhere. You are out in the middle of nowhere. And but the human interactions on that ranch are what struck me more. Every weekend that there's a home game in Stillwater, Boone brings a small group of friends to his ranch. He pays for everything. He transports them to and from. He lodges them at his house. And there's like this family aspect to it when you're there that weekend. And even though I'm not part of the family, I felt like part of the family. They treated me like part of the family. And there was a certain warmth at the dinner table that night. You feel like you're at a Thanksgiving meal. And the father of the ceremony is Boone, and he talks before you eat, and he says personal things about people who are there. It's just, you get this, it's a really different feel than when you look at him on the cover of Time magazine for oil. It's like, this is not that guy. And the guy whose name is on the stadium is a really personable human being. And then when you get to the stadium and you see his interaction with people at the stadium, I loved the fact that students with painted faces and paddles in their hands, ROTC members, senior citizens sitting 50 rows up in the bleachers, guys with cowboy hats and big belt buckles, all of those people knew who he was. They all wanted to thank him, and he would go out of his way to meet anybody who wanted to do that with him. He was like, he wasn't too important to mingle. You know, he's very much to me like a man of the people. And that, all of those things, when we were crafting that chapter about the booster, we felt like were things that needed to go in that chapter. To see this guy, you got to have that stuff in there.
Also, it's clear from your book that Boone thinks he got his bang for the buck from his investment.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a great scene where he's not going to make the investment. Right? Oklahoma State, Mike Holder has asked him for a huge investment, and he's not going to pull the trigger. And he's with his confidant in Dallas, and his confidant's basically saying, you know, Boone's thinking, I'll give him the money, but I'm going to leave it to him when I die. And his confidant's saying, but why do that when you could see the impact of your donation? You know, you're that kind of guy, right? And he kind of brings Boone around to that thinking, and then Boone does it. He pulls the trigger. And I think that's what's great is when he goes to the stadium now and he's there on a Saturday, you actually realize the impact of your generosity. You know, people say, oh, he's giving him so much money. Well, he has a lot of money. You know, people who have a lot of money give a lot of money, and at least the generous ones do. And so for me, yeah, that's an enormous amount of money. But for him, it's a lot of money, but he's able to realize that investment because he sees the impact, and I think that's what makes it sweet.
The Boone Pickens chapter, just one of many chapters in this book, and a widespread look at the whole college football landscape. Can you kind of put it in context and give us an idea of what else is in the book?
So we did the same thing with Mike Leach. You know, we traveled with Mike Leach. I spent a whole year shadowing him up at Washington State. We do a whole chapter on him getting fired at Texas Tech. We interviewed everybody in that case, including Craig James. People who've never talked about what went on there. People who think they know what went on there and they don't. So we do that. We went with Nick Saban at Alabama. We got inside the Alabama program, and for a year we're inside that program. We did the same thing at Michigan, where we went there. At each school that we went to Tennessee, we went to Brigham Young University. At each place, we were looking at something different. So at OSU, it's a booster. You know, at Washington State, it's a coach, Mike Leach, and his athletic director, Bill Moose. At Alabama, it's Nick Saban. At BYU, it's an All-American linebacker, Kyle Van Noy, who will be a first-round draft choice next year in the NFL. And Ziggy Ansah, who was a walk-on and who ended up being the 5th pick in the NFL draft by the Lions this year. This is a kid who, when he went to BYU, literally was from Africa and didn't know what football was. And walks on the team, and his first day in the locker room, someone had to show him how to put on a helmet. And now this guy is the 5th pick in the draft. I mean, those are the kind of stories we have in the book. So we, at each place, we're looking at something different. But we went to every major conference, and we went to a lot of the programs that people would know. At Ohio State, you know, we were looking at the booster scandal there that went on there. At Penn State, you know, obviously you know what we're looking at there. But in each place, we were looking at something different and giving you a kind of a view of the system that you wouldn't see by watching television.
The book is The System, the glory and scandal of big-time college football. He's Jeff Benedict, his co-author Armin Katayan, and Jeff will be in Stillwater Saturday doing co-signings of the book at the ball game and at the Student Union with Boone Pickens.